So supposedly it's going to be happening again. What do I mean by this? Zebec alongside Tangem is apparently going to be again appearing in a Bundesliga soccer match, which I find to be pretty cool. Now, nothing I say is financial advice, and by the time I upload this video, maybe the match already happened anyways, but besides that point, supposedly, again, they're going to be appearing in a Bundesliga soccer match when it comes to FC Bayern München versus something called Bayer Leverkusen. Supposedly, from what I can know, that's a very popular soccer team. I know FC Bayern München because I've been to Germany before. I've actually been there twice. However, besides that point, I do find this to be a pretty cool thing because let's just imagine the attention that this could maybe have when it comes to something like Zebec. I think it's actually a pretty cool thing. Now, is it going to really do much to the hypothetical price of ZBCN? Probably not in the short term. We'll wait and see. Especially not as a just pure direct result of that. I think if anything, it'd have to be through because of the change in sentiment when it comes to the space overall. But I think it doesn't necessarily become a disadvantage, right? If they appear in something like that, if anything, I think it's a pretty cool thing. Now, people like to say, this is a waste of resources. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that because even if we take a look at other projects out there, like VeChain, for instance, what they did with the UFC and also PowerSlap, like, does anyone think that was a waste of resources? I mean, probably some do, but I don't think about it that way. And when it comes to this, I don't think it's a waste of resources either. Why not, right? If Zebec could have, a certain avenue or a certain pathway to maybe have more attention brought to it due to advertising, I don't see why that's a bad thing. I think if anything, it's actually a pretty good thing. So when I take a look at Zebec, I think this is actually a pretty amazing, milestone. Because if we think about it, now Zebec has better fundamentals, in my opinion, than before. We've seen ISO 20022 compliance, right? When it comes to Zebec, it achieved that not too long ago. We also now see the super app, and they're still even planning more things regarding the super app, like for instance, the enterprise rollout and all that type of stuff. So really in the grand scheme of things, I think Zebec is now in a better position to really do more advertising because now I think the fundamentals are better. Now, of course, the charts aren't really showcasing such a positive thing when it comes to Zebec because it's had a pretty big pullback, but I'm just saying, in terms of fundamentals, I think it's arguably better than before. And I think this right here is a pretty cool thing at the end of the day. I feel like Zebec, as of right now, is in a better position fundamentally than before when it, did a advertising thing with the NHL in terms of ice hockey. I think the fundamentals weren't like that bad back then. However, I think right now is actually better than before. So yeah, I think this is actually a pretty cool thing that they're doing. However, again, supposedly they say that when it comes to the soccer match, it's going to be March 14th, 10:30 a.m. EST, and it's going to be 2:30 p.m. in the UK. So yeah, I do find this to be pretty interesting. Now, when I take a look at it as well, people like to tell me, well, ZBCN's pullback, it's not looking good and all this type of stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, sure. It's still like around 200 million in terms of market cap, so it hasn't really moved much ever since my last video. However, the sentiment when it comes to the altcoin space hasn't really moved by that much either as well, right? If let's say Zebec did something so revolutionary, fundamentally speaking, if it did it like right now, for whatever reason, it's not really going to do much to the price of ZBCN if the sentiment hasn't changed, right? When it comes to the altcoin space overall. ZBCN may have around 96,000 holders, but if the altcoin space isn't going to change in terms of sentiment, I don't think ZBCN could really do much either. I mean, around 96,000 holders may seem like a massive thing at first glance, but we have to consider this space in its entirety overall, supposedly, there's over 600 million owners. So if we take a look at like 96,000 approximately, that's so minuscule in the grand scheme of things, right? That's the way to take a look at it. So when people like to say, oh, ZBCN hasn't moved much, that means it's bad. Well, I don't really agree with that from a fundamental standpoint of view because I feel like, if anything, it's actually improving. However, besides that point though, ZBCN to me, if we never see an altcoin season, I'm not going to complain either because if we consider a market cap of around 500 million, in which we've seen like ZBCN achieve multiple times back in 2025, comparatively to where we are as of right now, we're around 200 million in terms of market cap. When ZBCN was around a 500 million market cap back then, that was on an altcoin season type of moment, in my opinion, for this space overall. So if ZBCN could just return to that previous, I guess, point, right? That's not going to be a moment where I would complain at all. If anything, I'd actually be pretty happy if it did that, just because we're around 2.5 times lower than that. ZBCN has had such a drastic pullback to the point that if it just goes back to its previous level, I don't even need an altcoin season at that point. That's the way to take a look at it. Now, I'd be happier if there was one, but it doesn't require me to like see one in order to be happy, right? Just because we're so low, if it just goes back to its previous level, I'm already really happy, but I'd be happier if there was a hypothetical altcoin season. But I'm just saying, even if there was an altcoin season, I'm not going to complain either, because if ZBCN could just go back to its previous point, again, I really have nothing to complain about in that instance, hypothetically speaking, but we'll wait and see. Now, Zebec overall, let's take this into consideration, right? I mean, it's still top 5 within the global trade and finance space, within this specific space, even despite this pullback. What do I mean by this? Of course, number 1 is Ripple, right? Number 2 is Stellar. Number 3 is XDC. Number 4, it's Zebec, in my opinion. I mean, if we think about it, Onyx is number 5, I think. Number 6, I think, is, maybe XPR. Number 7 is Swiftcoin. So it's not like ZBCN, even despite this pullback, kind of lost its positioning within the top 5 of global trade and finance. I think it's still there. So if I take a look at that right there, it's not like ZBCN's the only one, right? XLM had a pullback, XDC, XCN. So it's only natural that ZBCN did as well, considering kind of the sentiment when it comes to the altcoin space overall. But personally for me, I don't have any sort of desire to exit as of right now. I don't want to do that because I feel like the only thing I have to do is wait. Personally, I am not telling anyone to do anything, but beyond waiting, I mean, I don't get what I have to complain about actually, because the thing about waiting is that I feel like it's more easy for me to do than discovering, that Zebec even existed anyways. Because for me, like finding Zebec as a project, taking a look at this space overall, dollar cost averaging once a month and being dedicated like that, personally in my instance, that feels like a bit more difficult than me just waiting. Because at this point, if all I have to do is wait, I feel like, what do I have to complain about? The thing is, what is the big concern about waiting? Personally for me, I don't feel like there's any big concern because there's no time limit, right? If there was like a time limit, then okay, I'd be concerned. But in an actual like sense, the way you take a look at it, even if I waited another 20 years by holding ZBCN, which sounds very extreme, but I'm saying as just a hypothetical make-believe scenario, I could do that, right? Because there is really no quote unquote time limit. It's just like all in my mind, basically. So sure, some people may leave, some people may not care about this space overall, but I feel like I just don't want to leave because if the only thing I have to do is wait, then I'll wait. Because it's like, for instance, if I acquire a bicycle, if it's not like a collector's item or anything like that, the value is probably going to drop, right? The depreciation is going to be, kind of locked in. There's no way I could get what I got for it back in terms of that bicycle in a lot of cases. However, if I take a look at this space, sometimes the depreciation really isn't kind of locked in because the only way for me to lock it in is if I exit it. But if I don't realize it and I just hold, maybe it goes, in the opposite direction. We'll wait and see. Then what happens? Sometimes it recovers. Sometimes the depreciation within this space, in some cases that I do see, isn't like permanent, right? Sometimes, the roller coaster could go down. However, at times the roller coaster could also maybe go up. That's the way you take a look at it, even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. So as of right now, I'm just still waiting. But again, when I saw that update right there, when it comes to what they're going to be doing, supposedly appearing in a Bundesliga game, again, when it comes to FC Bayern München versus Bayer Leverkusen, again, when I take a look at that right there, I think it's pretty cool. Soccer matches, a lot of people do watch it, so I find it to be pretty interesting. And again, by the time I upload this video, maybe it already has happened. But, yeah, either way, I still think it's a pretty amazing accomplishment anyways. So I felt like making a video on that because, I just think it's pretty cool. However, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you have a very nice day. And hopefully I'll stay tuned for future upcoming updates when it comes to Zebec because I'll be making more. And again, I hope you all have a very nice day. It's been Lee the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.